Inkle weaving. This is an inkle loom. It is a very simple loom. It's used to create straps. You can make a strap that's several inches long. You don't want to go too close to the edge because your threads will come off. But this is used as a basic weave. The type of weave that's done on this is called warp-faced weave, which means that the threads that you put on are the ones that create the pattern. Most looms do a weft-faced weave where when you throw the threads across, it's what makes the pattern, but not on this one. This is also its own warping board. What that means is you don't have to take a pegboard, wrap your warp on it, and then take it off and put it on your loom. You actually dress the loom while you're warping it. So what you do is you run your threads through the pegs, and you are actually putting on heddles at the same time. Inkle looms don't generally come with their own heddles. You make your own with just a basic thread. And what you do is you take your thread and you wrap it between these two pegs, and then you tie it. And this is actually a heddle. This is a really nice, easy way of making heddles. If they break, they're easy to create again, and it's very simple. The type of things that you can do with this is dependent on how much yardage you need. This is your front beam, and it adjusts, so you can create different lengths. When you start your inkle, you don't want to start it with it all the way to the end, because you need to be able to push this out to get your tension. So you want to start it with a little bit in before you actually start your weave. And it's got a little nice handle there. The next thing we're going to talk about is thread. This is 10-2 cotton with a variegated color. As you can see, it's got some very nice blues in it. And this is what I'm going to be using for my yarn today. This is, since it's a thicker yarn, it's going to go fairly quickly. The thicker the yarn is, the more quickly it goes as far as your weave, but also the more draw-in you have. Because as you weave, you're actually making your threads go up and down over another thread, and that draws things in, so it actually shrinks it down a little bit. So the yardage that you start with, you want to take that into account. Usually take in or draw in is about 12%. So you want to add that into your mathematics when you're anticipating it. Let's see. That's about all for the basic information on the inkle weave. Like I said, it's a very simple loom. There are some more advanced types of weaving, which I will go into later. This we're going to do today is just a basic straight weave. Warping the loom is very simple. One thing you want to make sure is that you can untie the first thread, because you're going to tie it to the last one. You do this mainly because you have to be able to advance it, and if it's actually tied to this bar, you can't advance your web. So you kind of stop before you start it. So what I like to do is actually tie a little bow, or a knot that you can simply undo easily. Make sure that it stays. There, it's not going to stay. And you're doing this right. I'm a butterfinger today. Okay. Now my first thread is going to be one half of the shed, and the next thread that I go around is going to be the second one. But I'm not going to do a very long piece. This is the lower shed, and this one is the higher shed. Now, when you're doing the higher shed, you have to have a heddle in it, or you won't be able to change the sheds. Yeah. So, what we're going to take this, you wrap this around your thread, and then you loop it on the lower bar there. and then you continue on. And the lower one, you don't have to do anything to, so. And the higher one. And you simply repeat this until you have the desired number of threads. When you are creating your web, you want to decide how many ends per inch, and that's going to be dictated by the size of your thread. To do that, what you do is you take a ruler and wrap your threads around it, and you count how many lie in a row in 1 inch, and that gives you your ends per inch. That's generally how many you're going to have. So if you're going to do something that is 1.5 inches and it has 20 ends per inch, you're going to do 30 for 1.5 inches. Very simple math on that. The other thing that you want to take into account is the type of thread that you're using. If it's cotton, you want to take into account maybe 10 to 20% shrinkage when you wash it. You want to take a look at how you're going to wash everything. A lot of weavers like to do hand washing for most of their stuff, but if it's cotton, you really can just stick it in the washing machine. Cotton is very durable and very versatile. It can do just about anything. Why don't you pause it while
Yeah.
I have finished warping the board, and with an inkle loom, this is warping and threading and heddles and the reed and everything. So this is all included in the warping. On a regular loom, you would warp it, put it on there, wind it on, thread it through the heddles, thread it through the reed, and then tie it onto the front. This is all one, so you don't have to worry about all these other steps. There's like 6 or 7 steps that a regular loom has. It's all one here. I have my end thread here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Then I have the thread that I started with, which I have to undo. And it always knots on me. There we go. And then this, I want to go ahead and just tie these together. You want to make sure that the tension on this is the same as that on the rest of your loom. When you tighten it up, you don't want to have something be extra tight or extra loose. So tension is very important when weaving. Okay. Then the next step is actually tightening up the loom. Tighten the loom. What I'm going to do is loosen this, pull it as hard as I can, and then tighten it up. And then it's, as you can see, it's very tight. Okay, the next step is actually to start weaving, and we're going to do that in a moment. Go ahead and pause it.
Action.
Now I'm going to start the weaving now that I've got this all done, and I have a stick shuttle. This is a really nice stick shuttle. It's got a beveled edge on it, and that means that when I'm weaving, I keep this edge clear, so when I'm weaving I can use this as a beater to pull the threads in after I've woven. When you start, you want to have a fairly good amount set to the side, simply because I like to hem while I'm actually weaving. This makes sure that the ends are all taken care of and neatly aligned, and nothing's going to come unraveling when I take it off the loom. So in general, what you want to do as far as what you leave out is you want to leave at least 3 times the amount of thread as the width of your piece. That way you have more than enough thread to actually do your hem stitch. In this case it's so thin it doesn't matter. I've got lots. Now to weave, you put your thread shuttle through on one shed, and then you pull it up and put your stick shuttle through again. You want to make sure that your ends are going to be alright. And you change it again. Now this time I'm going to beat it, so I'm going to be pulling it down. As you can see, it's really loose. That's because this is the first one, and I want to spread it out a little bit. Make sure that my threads are looking nice and even. And then pull it through again. Change your shed, put your stick shuttle in, and beat. As you go along, it'll start getting a little bit easier. Starting a project is always the hardest part for any craft, and this is no different. And up, and you just have to trust that you're going to be able to do this correctly. Now I've started fairly high up, and as you're going to see, the pattern is going to start emerging from this variegated thread. It's going to be an interesting one because it's got purples in it. And it's going to break up the colors a little bit because it's going to look like it's got bands. As you can see, it's got a little bit of a color variation in here. See there, I pulled it too tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it up a little, loosen my thread, and redo that. And there, now it looks better. You want to simply keep the same tension going all the way through with your thread. And as you go along, it's going to get easier to keep that tension. Now I've got a fair amount started, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the hem stitch here on the bottom. And I like to use a fairly large needle. Usually the blunted quilter's needles work really well because then you're not piercing your threads. And what I'm doing on this is I'm going to take 4 threads, I'm going to put it through there, but I'm going to hook it underneath the needle. I'm going to pull it through so it's looped. And then I'm going to go back 2 rows between where I have those 4 threads. I'm going to put my needle through, bring it up, and I'm going to bring that under the needle. And that is a single hem stitch. And I'm going to take the next 4 threads, put them through again under the needle, so it looks like that. Pull it. Again, a couple of stitches up. Make sure you can see what we're doing here. Go up and through, hook the thread underneath it. This helps keep the needle up, but also locks everything in place. And it's a really strong hem stitch. It's the only one that I've ever really used. I know there are other hem stitches out there, but this is my favorite one. And it works really well. It looks nice too. So if you decide you want to have fringe on this, this will help make it look finished when you just take it off. And you just have to cut it whatever length of fringe you want. So if you want to have a long fringe and have it roped, you can just cut like way down here, and you've already got this hem stitch, so you don't have to worry about your threads coming out. 4 threads. Cut beautiful. I know the kitty's running around. You want to make sure that you catch all of your work threads when you're doing your hem stitch. Otherwise it's going to look a little funny when you have a thread that's not caught in there, and it'll show up a little bit. Most people will probably not notice it, but you will. At least this isn't a very large warp, so we don't have to worry about doing too many. When you get to the last one, you get the last one, because you can't go between anything at the end. What I usually do to lock it is I go down through the last couple of stitches in the weaving, pull it down, and then I pull up on the threads from the hem stitch and I slide that through a couple of them. You can see I've got two threads from the hem stitch on there. This locks the end in place, and I don't have to worry about that coming undone either. So as you can see, the hem is all done. You can even match this to the weaving, since it's the same color as the warp. You can match that in there and cut it off with the rest of your threads, or you can just trim it flush, and then you're done. Okay, back to the actual weaving. I started this up kind of high so that I would have to advance my work fairly soon. I did that so that you would see what advancing the work looks like. One of the things that you can do to put an additional length into the width is have a thread that sticks out here and have like a measurement for a bottom fringe or a side fringe, and you can have straight on one side and then fringe on the bottom for a belt or something. This is going to start getting tighter, so I'm going to go ahead and advance the work. And generally you want to have a couple of inches of space up here for you to work with on your warp. What you do is you loosen your warp a little bit. Grab this and you pull it forward, you move your heddles back. Back a little bit. And sometimes they stick a little bit, especially with cotton. And then you tighten your warp again. I like to hold it with my feet, pull, and get a really good tight fit. As you can see, I got a little tighter than I did before, which is probably going to help me. And you simply keep doing this until this is a basic weave. You can do some pickups on this type of loom. What a pickup is, you are going to take a thread that normally would go down and you hold it up with the others. And that is a more advanced type of weave. This one is just going to be a straight basic weave, mostly because this is a variegated yarn that looks really nice just as it is. And that's the advantage of using variegated yarns. Yarns in general for weaving are not good for knitting or crocheting. They don't have any give. So for crocheting and knitting, you need to have that sponginess, that give in that thread. Otherwise you can't manipulate it on your needles. Kind of gets stuck. And as you can see, this goes pretty fast. This type of thread is fairly thick, so it's not going to take me very long to actually get it woven. As you can see, it's got a really nice pattern to it. This is the finished piece. As you can see, the weaving, we started here with the hem stitch, and it goes all the way through the pegs, all the way around to here. This is about as far as you can go in weaving without it binding it too much and not going to be able to move your shed. As you can see, it's pretty hard to get it open down here. So this, between these 2 points, is what's called loom waist. You can cut it off as close to your hem stitch as you want, or you can use as much of this as you want for fringe. What I like to do is I like to cut it about in the middle, pull the heddles out, and then trim it. I've hem stitched both sides, as you can see, and I do have a bit of a length left on the hem stitch. And you can trim this off so it doesn't show, or you can put this up with your fringe if you choose to have fringe. A strap like this can be used for just about anything. You can use it as trim on something that you're making. You can use it as a strap for a bag. If you have a really thin piece with fine thread, you can make a watch band. There are a lot of uses for a piece like this. I like to make belts out of it because you can do a lot of embellishments on top of this. With this type of a base pattern, it's very easy to make a belt with. So what we're going to do next, we're going to go ahead and cut this off. And like I said, I usually try and cut it about where the cross is. You can cut it up here if you want and then cut it down there and just have your loom waist, but I'm just going to cut it right here. The heddles should slide off fairly easily, and you have all your heddles just sitting really nicely. Put those aside because we don't need them anymore. Then you just take the strap off, and it's ready for you to use however you choose. If you double this up, it makes a really nice belt. I do have a piece that I did earlier. This has, I believe this is 10-2 cotton, and it has a little gold lame kind of plasticky stuff in the middle of it. It's actually still stretchy, but I doubled this up so that it would make a nice belt, and then I put some embellishments on it with a couple of the belt buckle here, just the 2 loops so that you can weave it through. It's very comfortable, it's very stylish. You can do just about any kind of embellishment on these that you want, and this is a finished product. As you can see, it's got the fringe on there, and I actually did a double layer of fringe, which I need to trim a little bit more because I'm not happy with it. If you're looking for books, this one, if you could check it out at the library or find it at a used bookstore, is a really good one. She goes into techniques on how to do different patterns on the inkle rather than just doing a plain weave like this one. For the type of weave that this is, it's kind of an overshot where you're lifting up a thread and holding it longer through the weave. But she has a very good way of describing things. It's a very good book. She's very clear in her instructions, and as you can see, the pictures are really nice. This book is no longer in print, so if you're going to look for it to buy it, I would check out your local used bookstores. If you go online, the going rate is like $400, so I would try the used bookstores first, or the library, just check it out. But it's a really good book, and she is very concise and clear in what she says. And that is Inkle Weaving 101.